Oxygen is a gas that most animal and insect life on Earth needs to survive. Without it, we would suffocate. But what if, let's say, the oxygen levels in the atmosphere decreased by 50%? How would that affect life on Earth as we know it? That is the question we are asking right now on Life's Biggest Questions. Hello and welcome back to Life's Biggest Questions, the channel that asks the fundamental questions of life. I'm Charlotte Dobre, and listen, I know we just met, but I can tell we're going to be friends already. So if you're not subscribed, please do that because I'd like to see you around more often. And if you want to connect with the people behind LBQ, check out the description of this video for the links to our socials. Now that that's settled, let's get into this question. Can you imagine an Earth without oxygen? Well, the fact is there was no free oxygen in Earth's atmosphere for the first couple billion years of its existence. Photosynthetic prokaryotic organisms began producing oxygen as a waste product and contributed to the gradual buildup of free oxygen in the atmosphere. Then there was the Great Oxygenation Event. Around 2.4 billion years ago, Earth's atmosphere and the shallow ocean experienced a rise in oxygen. No one knows exactly what caused this event. All we know is that from this point onward, O2 started to accumulate in Earth's atmosphere, and it changed a weakly reducing atmosphere into an oxidizing atmosphere. And many scientists cite this as a possible reason for large-scale evolutionary phenomenons. Over the course of history, the amount of oxygen in Earth's atmosphere has changed many times. During the Carboniferous period, 300 million years ago, the Earth's atmosphere contained 35% oxygen, and this likely was the reason why insects and amphibians were so large at the time. And by large, I mean huge. Amphibious vertebrates were up to 20 feet in length. Can you imagine a 20-foot gecko? Amphibians breathe through their skin, and in doing so they can take in far more oxygen and grow much larger. By looking at what happened to the Earth and its life forms when there was a lot of oxygen, the exact opposite will be true if it had far less. The current concentration of oxygen in Earth's atmosphere is between 16 to 21%, and the rest is nitrogen, around 78%. So decreasing the oxygen by half would mean that the Earth's atmosphere would be made up of 8 to 11% oxygen. That's not a whole lot. We can also look at places on Earth today with far less oxygen and see how that affects humans. Places at higher altitudes like Mount Everest, where climbers need oxygen tanks to reach high altitudes. Ever been to Machu Picchu in Peru? Well, when you're traveling to places like Machu Picchu, tourists are warned about something called altitude sickness. Most people don't have a problem ascending to sea levels of 2,400 meters, but beyond this height, changes in oxygen and pressure start to affect human physiology. A few hours after arriving in Cusco, Peru, you will notice the thinness of air, and you will be out of breath after walking short distances. Human bodies do adjust to lower oxygen. Your red blood cell count will eventually increase, your breathing will become faster and deeper even when you're resting. From this information, we can assume that if the atmosphere even consisted of 15% oxygen instead of 21, humans would have a lot of difficulty breathing. 10% oxygen in the atmosphere is the minimum concentration for maintaining human life on Earth, and even with 10% oxygen in the atmosphere, most people would not survive, especially not long term. Larger animals that require more oxygen would likely die off, and smaller animals that require less oxygen would flourish because of that. There have been studies done that suggest that the amount of oxygen in the atmosphere actually affects the climate. Oxygen affects how much sunlight reaches the ground. Reducing oxygen levels thins out the atmosphere, which results in more sunlight reaching Earth's surface. More sunlight means hotter temperatures, and more water would evaporate, and that would increase humidity, and more humidity means more precipitation. Needless to say, the Earth would be a very, very hot, rainy, humid place with less oxygen. It would also depend how quickly our atmosphere lost that oxygen. If it were to suddenly drop by half, that would cause significantly more damage than if the oxygen in our atmosphere decreased over time. A gradual decrease would somewhat permit time for humans and other wildlife to adapt. It should be noted that if the oxygen on Earth decreased by half, that would mean something else would have to replace that oxygen, something like carbon dioxide, nitrogen, or methane gas. If carbon dioxide replaced oxygen, then plant life would very well survive, and without animals to consume that plant life, it would likely flourish. There were many life forms on Earth that existed without oxygen for millions of years. That life used the CO2 in the atmosphere, expelled oxygen as a waste product, and then other oxygen-breathing life forms would start to pop up again. Removing half the oxygen in the atmosphere would cause mass extinction, but eventually life would begin again. But if the oxygen in our atmosphere was replaced with something toxic like methane gas, life forms, including plant life, would have a lot harder of a time surviving, if at all. The scary thing is, the overall level of oxygen in the atmosphere is decreasing. According to a study published in the journal Science by Princeton University's Professor Daniel Stopler, oxygen levels have decreased by 0.7% over the last 800,000 years, and it keeps declining. Scientists don't know why this could be happening. It could be a variety of factors. An increase in erosion rates is one hypothesis. The global cooling that has taken place over the last 56 million years is another. But the drop in O2 rates is happening very slowly. tens of parts per million per year, which is far too slow to affect the climate for the organisms who call Earth their home. In another million years, however, the Earth might look very different. Well, there you have it. Thanks for making it all the way to the end of the video, but we're not quite done yet. Let's look at some of your questions and comments from my last video on this channel. What if SCP-3199 was real? Rayozai Red Fox said, what if humans could spit acid? I think that would be really fun. Just me? Kujimon said, can you stop with these SCP videos? Sure, just as soon as you stop clicking on them. Darth Vitega said, what if all the psychopaths and narcissists in the world suddenly died? I would assume there would be far less people. Everyone's a narcissist these days. Thank you for watching Life's Biggest Questions. If you enjoyed this video, you will love the playlist that's currently flashing on your screen. And don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so I can see you in a future episode of Life's Biggest Questions.